The following is a special video presentation of the Hennepin County Library.
Hello, I'm Virginia Morris from Hennepin County Library, and I'm here today talking with Carol Weston, author of Girl Talk, All the Stuff Your Sister Never Told You. If your sister never told you about drugs or unprotected sex or AIDS, Girl Talk does all of that and a whole lot more. Carol, you commented that you receive thousands of letters and respond
personally to every single one. Yes,
all.
I do.
Have you found in the last few years a vast difference in the kind of letter you're receiving? Are they becoming more desperate? And
yes and no. I started receiving letters in 1985 when the first edition of Girl Talk came out. And most of the letters then and now are relationship letters. I have a crush on Mike, but I don't think he knows I'm alive. Or my best friend suddenly is being courted by the popular group and is dumping me, and it really hurts. Shifting friendships are big. I want to get along better with my mom, and she never, she's always invading my privacy. Things like that are perennial teen topics and teen troubles. But what's a little scarier is now in the 90s, I'm getting more letters about unprotected sex, and it worries me. Back, a long time ago, women worried that their daughters might get a reputation, or women worried that their daughters might get pregnant. And then came the pill, and you didn't have to worry quite as much about your daughter getting pregnant if she was sexually active. And of course, we're all trying to slow teenagers down. Now, even if your daughter is on the pill, that's not enough because of AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases, but particularly AIDS, which right now has no cure. It's really frightening if a daughter or son is not being extremely careful and using condoms on the pill. So we've started right off with all the hard topics, but I think that's what scares me now about the letters that I get when, you can't do that. A girl who's maybe 14 years old and says, some people think I'm too young for sex, but I think it doesn't matter so long as you're in love. Well, it does matter. So I feel that my job is to arm teenagers with information. Instead of just saying, just say no, I say just say no, K-N-O-W. And I will tell them all about, for instance, in the sex chapter, I have so much about the diseases. In 1985, the book only had about 2 paragraphs about AIDS. Now in 1992, with the new edition, it's got about 2 pages. But also herpes is still among us. 500,000 Americans get herpes every year. Chlamydia, which lots of mothers and sisters may have never have heard of, but it's the most common sexually transmitted disease. The more you tell teenagers about all this stuff, the more they themselves say, maybe I'm really not ready for all this. And certainly pregnancy has not gone away. 1 million American girls get pregnant every year, and this is an amazing statistic. By the age of 20 in America, 44% of girls, before they reach 20, get pregnant at least once. In other words, you have to have a great big, enormous high school or city, and nearly half of those girls are going to get pregnant once during their teen years. It's incredible. That's an Alan Guttmacher Institute statistic. And those statistics are amazing, but I think a lot of mothers and fathers still try to play ostrich. And while society is getting sexier with every spin of the earth, and movies and TV, there's sex selling everything, but suddenly we expect our teenagers to just say no, just say no. So it's tough on teens, and I think I certainly preach abstinence, and I preach wait, and if you can, saying no to a boy might be saying yes to yourself. Sex is not a shortcut to love. I get girls to slow down sexually, and some of the letters say, I read what you said and it made me realize that I'm really not ready for sex. But there are a lot of girls who are already active, and a lot of boys too. So in that case, my mission is to get them to really be responsible, which, as one mother was saying to me, not 1 condom, make them wear 3 condoms, but that won't work.
Idea.
No, 1, But yeah, and actually some of the letters will say, we used 2 condoms or whatever, and so I explain how birth control works.
How it works.
What your daughter doesn't know can hurt her. Maybe that wasn't always the case, but that is sure the case now.
It certainly is. I think maybe you've taken on another responsibility too. You quoted one letter in which I think a 15-year-old was pregnant with her stepfather's child.
Right.
And obviously in this case you followed through until she was
Right.
connected with an agency.
Right.
Has this happened often?
Not often. In most cases, I do. It's a, they seek advice. I give advice back. Once in a while, a girl will say, "Boy, that worked," and now I have a crush on Jamie or something, and I'll write back one more time. But I'll say I can't really be a personal Dear Abby. It's better, to once or twice. But when somebody is in a horrible incest situation or is having real battles with bulimia or something very serious. Yeah, I call them up or I write them back or I make sure that things are going okay. This particular girl that you're referring to, I knew that if I intervened, her life was going to change for the better, but her life was going to really change. And what I did was I called her and I said that I was legally bound as a person who now knew that she was a victim of incest to do something about it. But I would feel better if she were the one who set the wheels in motion. And I gave her the phone number of a child abuse hotline, and I said, I'm going to call you right back and make sure you call. And she did call, and now is living with her grandmother. She gave the baby up for adoption. But, it's a mess. I mean, and it's not her fault. A lot of the teenagers who write me, teenagers get this bad rap, like, it's a terrible time and hormones are going wild and they're all, out to get their parents or something or making us all turn gray. Sometimes it's the teenagers who are minding their own business and the parents are really making life tough on them too. I think it's certainly a case of incest is a dramatic illustration of that kind of point.
Yeah. Do you hear from parents?
I hear much more from girls than from parents, but I get some really very nice and kind of grateful letters from parents saying that they were very surprised that I wrote back or that it meant a lot to their daughter that I wrote back. Or I've never really gotten a parent worried that I was meddling or anything. And I
wondered about that.
Yeah, and people do wonder about that, but I think a parent who really sits down and reads the book realizes that I'm stepping in, I'm helping them out. I'm kind of I'm the liaison, like the big sister, but I'm really the go-between between the mother and the daughter. Mothers and daughters sit down, they get really flustered talking about sex and drugs and rock and roll, So I'm there really giving the same information that a mother, if she had all the time in the world to research it, would want her daughter to have. Because I am saying go slow, stop. But the mothers, but because I'm not the mother, the daughter's willing to listen to me and take that advice.
Yes.
I don't have to.
Yes.
She doesn't have to face me the next morning over breakfast. So I've got this unfair advantage over mom. So the daughter's not rolling her eyes when she's listening to me say, if you drink and drive, it's a terrible idea. The mother says that, and the daughter's gonna say, Mom, I know,
right.
But I don't only say don't do it. I say 8,000 American girls, well, actually 8,000 American teenagers are killed every year in drunk driving accidents. It's really, it's really scary to drink and drive, and that's really about the number one killer of teens. And you start putting the statistics there, and again, the girls are going to say, "Well, maybe I'm not going to hop in the car with George since he's drunk."
Yes.
Teenagers have become more responsible about having designated drivers. They're not more responsible about drinking. There's less drugs in the 90s than there were in the 80s and 70s, although the drugs are still out there. But in the late 70s, marijuana was really so popular, and apparently 10% of high school seniors in the late 70s were smoking marijuana every day. Well, that's now much lower, sort of. It's a much smaller percentile, but drinking is the drug of choice. And so if you really give the statistics, that helps. With smoking, I think if you tell them the statistics about lung cancer, that sounds far away and not very frightening.
It does. Nothing happens.
Nothing happens. Big deal, so I'll worry about emphysema when I'm
Right.
90. So what I sometimes tell them about smoking, I give those statistics anyway, but what I also tell them is that it's going to make your clothes smell. Some boys think that kissing a girl who smokes is like licking an ashtray, things like that, and that might get girls to slow down a little.
Girls, certainly. Do you ever hear from boys?
Not as much as girls, but I know that I'll hear from some brothers who've read the book. Some guys have picked up the book to better understand the teen girl phenomenon.
I would have advised that.
Right.
I in fact, wonder, may you someday choose another name and write Guy Talk? Or
I might. I've thought about that. Or I might enlist my husband or a friend of, I have a few male writer friends to help me out. I think in Girl Talk, one thing that made Girl Talk work was because I have diary excerpts. So I would have to find a guy who had diary excerpts. But I think having the excerpts from my own diary from when I was a teenager that say, Bob, I don't usually give the name of my boyfriend. I usually call him my curly-haired, boyfriend or whatever.
Right.
But my high school boyfriend and I broke up and, cried for days, that kind of thing. And having that actually in the diary form I think has helped girls realize, yes, this lady really was a teenager.
She's real.
I'm going to listen.
Right.
Makes me more credible. We were talking before about what's sort of scarier about the 90s and the letters of desperation. I think another frightening thing that's kind of a 90s thing is teen suicide is now the third leading cause of death among young people aged 15 to 24. You think third leading cause of death? This is unbelievable. Several thousand older teens and several hundred younger teens take their own lives every year in America. And I think nothing is sadder. You know, depression is common and it's crippling, but teenagers don't have a very good frame of reference. So they don't realize that their first love is not their last love, that not getting into the college of their choice is okay. There's often a lot of parental pressure from parents who may not realize that their teen is about to crack. And so I think that's really frightening. And I tell girls, look, you don't want to end your life, you want to change your life. There's a very big difference. And I think, but that's what's really scary to me is that these numbers have kind of quadrupled. The rate of suicide among young people has quadrupled since the 50s. So some of the letters I get, I have gotten letters from suicidal girls, but I've gotten more letters from girls who've said, boy, I was so upset when somebody stood me up. Don't worry, I didn't try to kill myself, but I was really, really upset. And I think, man, don't worry. You didn't try to kill yourself, that it crossed your mind that it was an option that she immediately rejected. When I think when I was growing up, it wasn't an option. And here I'll give a story in Girl Talk about a friend of mine who did try to kill herself as a teenager, and then who realized that she was so glad that she got her stomach pumped out in a hospital, because here she's got 2 fine kids and a fine husband and an interesting job, and she's just really delighted that she didn't succeed. And I think really reminding teenagers that life is long and they don't really want out, they just want to get back in a little better is important advice.
So, do you see a difference? You cover a vast range of ages.
I do.
Are you seeing a difference in the letters from the preteens to, say, the 17s?
A very, very big difference. The younger daughters and the younger girls, they write me most about friendship, as I was mentioning before. That friendship is such an issue, you know, popularity. And I remember wanting to be more popular and not being as popular as I wanted to be, and how that can just eat away at your self-esteem. So I deal with friendship a lot. I think it's almost like crushes, and then it gets replaced by crushes, but it's almost like having a romance with a girl, a platonic romance, because it is so important to talk to that girl every day on the phone and to sit next to her at lunch and all of that, and to really have a claim, which we adults
a best
are not,
friend.
Yeah, you know, a best friend, and then she starts seeing Tracy, and it really hurts you when that happens. I think the younger girls write me most about friendship, crushes, sometimes crushes on teachers or rock stars or TV stars, and sometimes on the boy next door. Girls are really ready for romance a lot before boys are ready for romance, and they want to label it. They want to say, well, you know, we hang out together all the time, but I don't know if we're going out. And it matters to them whether or not they are going out when I try to get them to enjoy the fact that they're hanging out all the time and to let the relationship blossom. But also the body image is a real big one, especially for younger girls, because all of a sudden you hit puberty and your body changes, and that's a really big deal. And so many of the letters are, you know, I feel flat as a first grader. What am I going to do? All the other girls are buxom and I'm not, or you know, I'm the first one to develop and people envy me, but boys are always coming on to me and it makes me want to deck them, that kind of thing, or a lot of letters. I try to get girls to think nutrition and to think about eating moderately, because I think in America so many adult women have such a terrible relationship with food. It's sort of love, hate, fear, obsession on eating.
Obsession, certainly, yes.
And you buy any magazine and there's the whole, you know, the diet and also the gooey chocolate dessert recipe. So I try to get girls to understand how diets work, how they do not work, how fad diets are a terrible idea, and to get them, you know, kind of nip it in the bud so that they're not going to spend their whole life jumping on and off the diet merry-go-round. Also, anorexia and bulimia were not prevalent. They were prevalent in the 80s, they're still prevalent now, but that was not a big thing in the 70s or the 60s.
No, or at least not discussed.
Not discussed, and I have to believe that it really wasn't 5,000, 8 million Americans and 5% of the teenage population having a serious eating disorder, because I have to believe that if so many girls, anorexia is visible. I mean, you can tell when a girl is anorexic. And so I have to believe that it really wasn't as common as it was. So I think that's another kind of major, big deal to tackle.
It is. Well, you said in Girl Talk you did jump into all of these issues right from the start, which I appreciated. I think 300 pages, perhaps a teenager is going to read over a period of time, but at least the important issues are right
well,
there.
they're all there. In some ways, the book is supposed to be a personal encyclopedia, and some girls have said it's my Bible or whatever, and they consulted a lot. Some girls have written me when they were 18 and said, I got this book when I was 14, the first edition. Because it does, it's supposed to grow with the girls.
And it does.
And it does. I'd like to think it does. And actually, in the new edition, I added some more about applying to college. Well, I always had about applying to college and getting financial aid and writing your essays and all, but now I have sort of 10 good ideas for freshman year to make freshman year go more smoothly so that the girl doesn't feel that I've abandoned her at graduation. And I've added the letters, not all of them, but the new book has 100 letters from teen girls. I could read you a couple. I know you've already read some yourself, but just to get a gist of the real range of letters. Dear Carol, I am 13 and I have just one question. How do you French kiss? My boyfriend and I have kissed, but we haven't Frenched yet. I have the feeling he knows how, but the problem is I don't. So if you would write down the details of how French kissing starts and ends and how to hold him in the process, it would be helpful. But I need the information very soon, so please hurry. 3 exclamation points. Thanks, Brenda. I've changed all the names. That was sort of a funny one. I rushed out her letter, though. I rushed her a letter, and I told her how to do it, and I basically said, don't worry about it, relax.
In time for the big day.
That's right, and that if she'd practiced on the entire soccer team, that would probably turn off the guy, and that guys worry about it, too, and chill out. It's going to be okay. Here's another example of a letter. Dear Carol, my mom recently died and my dad remarried. It didn't work, so he got a divorce. Now another girl moved in. They sleep together and I imagine have sex. They always bathe together and it makes me feel ashamed or sometimes nervous or mad, like she's taking my dad away from me. Tammy. And then you think, wow, a mother's death, a father's sexuality, and divorce, all of these things happening at once, and it's just so hard for this girl. And I guess in the case of step-parents, only 25% of American families right now are nuclear families, mom, dad, and the kids. You're lucky if you get along well with your mom and your dad. You better, give them a big kiss tonight and put a little note, I love you, under their pillow. And a lot of girls are very lucky who live in single-parent families and even zero-parent families, which is a phenomenon of the 80s because of AIDS, guns, drugs. Right. But I think a lot of kids have trouble making the transition, and it's a difficult one. It's hard for stepmothers and stepfathers too, of accepting a new spouse, a new parent. And so in these cases, I kind of point out to them that it's hard for the other parent too, and the new parent, the new step parent, may be also trying to give them a break. And wouldn't you be nicer to them if they were your friend's mother? Are you being rude to your mother? I mean, I kind of say that sort of thing, but I also say that you should tell your natural parent that you miss them, and certainly in case of a death, that you miss your mother and that you wish you could do more with the parent, just a date. My father and I used to go out on dates. He would take me to a restaurant, and the two of us would have dinner. And I have 2 older brothers, and they also would go out occasionally, just
each
alone,
separately for their own time.
I know you have 11 children. That was probably a hard one to take them out separately very much, but there was an age span there.
But it can be done, and I think it needs to be done.
And it needs to be done. And I think if you have a monthly movie date with your daughter, that's not, once a month. Surely you can do that just with that one daughter. And if you have 3 daughters, then lucky you. You get to go to 3 movies.
Right.
But, I think doing that sort of thing is really important, and it's certainly important for the daughters. I remember in high school when I would go out with my dad and I'd tell my best friend, and say, well, what did you guys talk about? Because she couldn't imagine even spending an hour and a half with her dad. And that's sad. I mean, spend some time with your kids, and kids, spend some time with your parents so that it doesn't feel like you're losing touch, because these are important years. And your daughters and sons, part of adolescence is pulling away, and part of it is spending time with the other peers. But I'm going to read one more letter that I'd marked here just to show, or maybe 2 more. Let's see. Well, I don't know. Dear Carol, I guess you could say I'm in the in crowd. The problem is that more and more of my friends are turning to cigarettes, alcohol, and even some drugs, mostly pot. One of my closest friends got drunk last night. I'm highly against all that stuff, and my friends have promised not to pressure me into it, but I'm scared. I just got back from the mall where I was the only one who was straight. I felt like such a prude. How can I stay out of that junk without losing my friends? It seems like I'm about the only one, well, not the one and only, person from our gang that cares about grades and my health. Am I normal? I'm only 14. I can't believe I'm having this problem, this straight one. A lot of girls ask, am I normal? Yes, you are normal. I think one way to not smoke if you don't want to smoke is to say, I just don't like the taste, or it makes me cough, rather than saying, God, I can't believe you guys are smoking. If you start getting holier than thou,
Yes.
you are putting yourself in the prude position, which no teen wants to get into. But if you say, I just don't like the taste, then you're not questioning them. They might understand that you are, kind of subtext, but it's an easier way for a teen to save face and still say no. Last letter I'm going to read from Girl Talk. Dear Carol, I found out that a guy I like takes drugs, all kinds, and lies a lot. When I call him, he's either waiting for someone to call or sleeping. I lent him $100 because he said he needed it badly. I know he'll never pay me back, and he keeps asking for more. Whenever I say no, he says, you don't love me, so I do what he asks. I don't like doing it, but I don't want to lose him. One more thing, he barely talks to me in school. Tiffany. Well, my answer here is 2 lines. Lose him, he's a loser. Cut your losses and run. Start looking elsewhere for romance, and I bet you won't look back. But I also think that Tiffany, and again, names changed, if there were more love in her family and better friendships and more extracurricular activities and more grades and just more stuff to do, she would feel less desperate,
less dependent
and
on
less
this
dependent and
relationship.
less eager to have a boyfriend, whether he was a nice boyfriend or not. I think a lot of girls get hung up with they really want a boyfriend, and they forget that they want a nice guy who cares about them. They don't want just some guy who's using them, and they want a relationship and not a rut. So those are sort of examples of the range, and it does. There are 100 letters.
It is vast.
So.
Right.
Yeah, it is vast, and it's been interesting for me. And there was a period there when I was probably on my 1200th letter, thinking, and my husband every so often says, why do you do this? At some point, you just have to stop or send a form letter. But I thought, if they're going to pour out their guts to me, then, and a lot of times the letters really are, I had sex for the first time, or I just got my period, or my parents just got divorced. It's really the raw stuff. Then not only do I owe them an answer, but I realize that they're giving back to me too. They're really keeping me on target, because it was 7 years ago when I first wrote Girl Talk. It was when I was 19 when I first started writing for teens, and I got my first byline in Teen Magazine in 17. And I never really stopped writing for teens. But because of the letters, I feel like I'm not making up, I'm not imagining what teens are up to.
That's right.
They still keep
exactly.
me in the know. They keep me on target.
And feel a sense of responsibility.
Yeah, I do. That too. No, absolutely. But it's been very gratifying, feeling as though I'm sort of a big sister to a lot of teenagers. I've really enjoyed that role. And
you have 2 daughters. Do you think that when they become teenagers, they're going to roll their eyes at you, or will they pick up the book? And
Both. That's the thing. That's what's my great comfort, is that they're going to roll their eyes at me. But this book is going to be in their bedroom, and if they suddenly have a question, they'll have a place to turn to. And if I'm busy, or I'm on a book tour or something, which is when they suddenly have the burning question, or they have a friend who thinks she might have gonorrhea, well, they'll have a place they can find out whether that's ridiculous, or whether, she might,
Right.
So it's a comfort to me to know that my girls, who will roll their eyes, will have the book. I think that, I write for parents and parenting, and I write for Women's Day and McCall's and Ladies' Home Journal, but it's not as though my family life is always perfect. And my girls now are young. They're 4.5 and 2, this being 1992. And so my toddler has tantrums. Toddlers have tantrums. She's basically a really good kid. And my 4.5-year-old too. But she's normal. And so my job is to figure out how to best deal with the normal strife, and not to avoid the strife. The strife is part of it.
And From Here to Maternity.
From Here to Maternity was
where these children began.
Yes, I've been very privileged that I've been able to write books first person, so it's sort of been soul searching and researching. And From Here to Maternity is also a first person book. Really, the first line is my husband talked me into it, because I wasn't quite ready.
I noted that line.
I was having a great time being a Dear Abby for teens. I wasn't really ready to have babies, and I knew that would really change my life. And in fact, that's what I tell teenagers. You can have your babies, but just don't do it at 15, or don't even do it at 25 if you're not ready.
Right.
You've got plenty of time. Do I have time to read a little passage from this?
Yes.
Okay. This is just a real chronicle. It's again based on diaries, but this time it's not diary excerpts. It's based on diaries, and it takes you from the decision to whether to have a baby. And the last scene in the book is I'm sitting there with in a cab in New York City, where I live. Elizabeth by my side. We've just left the OBGYN, and I'm very big and pregnant with baby number 2, clearly having taken the leap of faith that motherhood is wonderful, albeit it has its trying moments, especially I think for mothers of toddlers and mothers of teens. But here's, we talked about breast size and how it, how it does a number on preteens and teens. So here's, it also affects those moms. I know I've gone on and on about the enormity of my breasts, and I know I should stop, but the most amazing thing about pregnancy is how your body keeps changing. My body hadn't changed, really changed, since puberty. My breasts hadn't grown since 10th grade. I'd scarcely worn a bra in 15 years. It was time to go shopping. Only this time I'd be going alone, without my mother waiting discreetly outside the dressing room to whisper well-chosen words of encouragement. I went to Mother Care, which specializes in baby and maternity wear. The clerk inadvertently offended me with the old, "Gee, you're hardly showing" line. I went to the Town Shop, which specializes in lingerie. There the saleswoman showed proper respect for my burgeoning bust. "Oh yes, you should definitely be wearing a support bra," she said. To my delight, she even scolded me for not coming in earlier. I ducked into the dressing room, tried on several bras, and chose two. Then I noticed their size, 36C. 36C! No! Last I checked, I was a 32 AA. Surely I hadn't skipped the A's and B's. This must be like when you try on a designer dress and the tag says size 3, but you know it's just flattery. I looked again. Vanity Fair, 36C. A C on me! I blushed with triumph and resolved to save a tag for evidence for my scrapbook. I couldn't wait to tell Rob, Jen, Patty, my mother. Strange, but during this period, I lost all modesty about my body. I almost felt it wasn't my body, my petite, particular body. It was a generic pregnant woman's body, a case study, a textbook example of the changes incurred during gestation. I even flashed for interested girlfriends so they could see my growing belly and the network of blue lines crisscrossing my breasts. The effect reminded me of the transparent models we studied in biology when we learned about veins and arteries. My body had become a curiosity and I didn't mind. Many pregnant women object when strangers touch their bellies, but I thought I might find it endearing when someone I'd never met acknowledged my future son or daughter with an affectionate pat. People are entitled to welcome in the next generation, aren't they? I practically considered my own pregnancy public domain. And now, a 36C! I laughed as I paid for my bras. I imagined I was in a musical in which the ring of the cash register was the first note of an elaborate melody of drum rolls, trumpets, and violins. I could see myself skipping out the door and bursting into song. I feel busty, oh so busty. I feel busty and lusty, hooray. Oh, I'm glowing 'cause I'm showing I finally look pregnant today. I just hoped I could appreciate being flat again when this was all over. So
Little
I have
did you know.
a little bit about bras, a little bit about sex in both of these books.
Well, I see Girl Talk takes us from preteen to
about
toddler?
18. Oh yes, preteen to toddler, right. I mean, Girl Talk really, one of these days I may have to do another. I did do a book called How to Honeymoon, which kind of bridged that gap in between. And someday I'll be writing for Lears in Modern Maturity, but right now it's
yes.
Girl Talking from Here to Maternity.
Are you working on anything right now?
I'm spending a lot of time with my kids right now and promoting the books a little bit and working on magazine, but I don't really have a book up my sleeve. I'm thinking about fiction, so we'll have to
you are?
check in to see if I ever do anything about that. I love the idea.
I do too. I can't think that after all of this you aren't going to write maybe wonderful teen novels.
Well, thank you. I'd like to think about that, or children's books.
Or children's books.
Or adult books, or whatever. But I sure haven't
whatever.
sat down and started the Great American Novel yet. Or I've started it twice, but I haven't finished the Great American Novel yet.
There's plenty of time. Well, for me, I will take Girl Talk to every single junior high that I visit.
Thank you.
And encourage not only the young teens, but the mothers to be aware of what's happening with their children. Carol, thank you for being here today. It's been fun, great to get acquainted.
Thank you so much,
And
Virginia.
we'll be watching for more books.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
A presentation of the Hennepin County Library.